Upcoming support groups and workshops at Authentically Us. Tuesday, April 29th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Speed Friending. Monday, May the 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern, Messy Middle and Divorce Support Group. Thursday, May the 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern, Catalyst Relationship Recovery Support Group. Thursday, May the 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Releasing Shame and Guilt Workshop. Thursday, May the 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern, Lavender Dating's Writing Your Online Dating Profile. These online events and more available at Authentically Us, a support community for queer identifying women. For more information and to join, visit annemariezanzal.com. Hey, queer friends and allies. Welcome to Season 6 of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to today's episode of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories. I'm Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hey folks, I'm Barbara Rowlandson, so glad you're here.
And today we're talking about something that can feel thrilling, messy, vulnerable, confusing, exhilarating, and sometimes all at the same time. How to explore your sexuality. Maybe you're coming out later in life. Maybe you've always known there was something more but couldn't name it. Or maybe you're simply curious about what feels true for you now. Wherever you are on the path, you are not alone. Let's breathe together and dive in. So, Barb Rowlandson, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm super duper. Had a great weekend. How about yourself?
I had a very good weekend too. I had had a half a vacation last week, so back at work this week. So it's nice. We were busy last week. You had a great weekend, right?
Yeah, I spoke at a conference, did some farm work, getting the flowers ready for putting out in the beds in springtime. So yeah, that stuff feeds my soul. You know, sometimes you gotta put your fingers in the dirt.
And wiggle around.
Just wiggle around. For you, it's going in the water, right? It's like,
Yes,
you're
absolutely.
water, I'm dirt. Together
Yeah,
we're mud. I don't know.
you're water. I'm water, you're earth. So this podcast episode came about because I got a question the other day. So Barb and I get messaged a lot on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and a lot of times people just want to talk or they have a couple questions or something like that. And if you follow us on any of those social media channels, please reach out if you have a question or you're curious about something or you want to hear about more what we offer, please reach out. But what happened is this woman had messaged me, very new, thought she was bi her whole life, now is considering her sexuality. She's considering her sexuality now, maybe being a lesbian. I was talking with her about exploring her sexuality, and she said to me, "What does that even mean?"
Okay. And you thought podcast idea.
Yeah, well, I did because I'm like, you and I assume, I think sometimes when you're somebody who does something all the time, sometimes you forget the basics.
Mm.
You and I live and breathe this stuff. We talk about it almost every single day of our lives. And so sometimes like saying to somebody, well, you should go and explore your sexuality. Like, what does that mean? How do I do that?
Do I run out and start sleeping with a bunch of people, or how does this even work?
Well, yes, sometimes people think that. And yes, you can do it that way. But there's also a lot of the reasons why exploring your sexuality really matters. And And we really want to talk about ways you can begin to explore your sexuality. So, this podcast episode, I would say, is for the person that is just starting out on their journey. They may be questioning a little bit, but really not sure where the next step is.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Barb, when you started to explore your sexuality, What did it feel like for you?
A whole new world. Well, to be honest, I had a catalyst experience, so that with a woman, as you know. So I like to joke that she sort of put two hands on my back and shoved me into the realm of lesbians, and I've never left. But there was a time after that relationship was over where I did have to sort of make a decision. Okay, like, how do I want to move forward? I've had this really profound experience. I'm not quite sure if I am actually a lesbian or was I just gay for her, right? So I like to joke that, I know you've heard me make this joke a million times, that I did the Coke and Pepsi test after that relationship when I was starting to date again. And I dated men and I dated women, and it didn't take me long. Doing the work that we do, not everybody has that catalyst experience and all of a sudden has these like intimate relationships with women sort of right off the hop, right?
I'm gonna interject though, but even women can have those experiences and still be like, was it just her? Like you mentioned briefly. Does this mean I'm not straight, or am I a straight girl that just slept with a woman for a couple of times?
Right, right, exactly. So there needs to be some real reflection and some exploration. And I think it's really approaching it with a great deal of curiosity. Okay, if I'm going to wipe the slate clean with what I know about my own sexuality and start over again, let's approach this like an exploration. So it requires a little bit of courage, right? Stepping out of our comfort zone and being willing to try new things, meet new people, have new experiences, and pay really close attention to our thoughts and our sensations, our feelings in our bodies, and how we're reacting to some of these new experiences.
Well, and also too that sexual exploration can be really, really thrilling and exciting, right? But it is also what?
Well, it can also be slightly terrifying if you don't
And
know what
intimidating.
you're doing.
Sure, here we are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, and all of a sudden we're exploring something that oftentimes through our societal norms have been told that it's wrong. So here we're going to bring up again compulsory heteronormativity, where the expectations placed on you as a human in this society is that you are going to marry, partner with a opposite gender person, and produce children. Now, some people don't get those expectations placed on them by their families. They don't. But probably I would say it's over 50% of people that get those expectations, more like probably like 80 to 90%.
I
Compulsory heterosexuality. Let's give a definition for that.
Sure. I'm going to define it as the expectation that the default is that you and everyone in the world around you is straight,
Unless proven otherwise.
unless proven otherwise, right? So
Right.
it means like every institution, every person, every system that we deal with is geared towards heteronormativity and sometimes conform to that because that is the expectation without really doing a lot of inner investigation as to whether this actually feels correct for me, right? How would you define it?
That I also, beyond compulsory heterosexuality, I'm going to start saying that it's very patriarchal in notion.
Mm,
That I want to add that also women, this is not really about compulsory heterosexuality, but also about patriarchal notions that women are expected to take care of everybody and
hmm
they're expected to put themselves last, especially in cultures or religious institutions where that is what everybody is taught. So to even think that you could put your own needs before the man in your life and the children in your life is actually quite radical for a lot of people. It was even radical for me, even though I considered myself quite progressive and liberal, like because I
hmm
had been so indoctrinated. And indoctrination didn't just happen in church. I mean, you see it all the time. Like I can see it all the time in TV shows now,
hmm
where the female character will, you know, um, downplay her own needs so that the man can be fulfilled.
Mhm.
And also, too, a lot of times, like I watch TV shows, and women are the punchline, or
Mhm.
they're like the side, literally the side piece. They don't really have. There's not much character development with them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes the women say things in TV shows that they would never say in real life. And so I find that, beyond compulsory heterosexuality, I do think that another thing that really affects us is patriarchal notions of how a woman should live their life. And then oftentimes, too, we have our own internalized expectations about how we should show up in the world, what
Mhm.
we should do. And I think that happens to a lot of people because getting married in your 20s is way too young.
Oh my gosh. There should be a law.
Yeah, you shouldn't get married. I'm sorry, you shouldn't get married until you're in your 30s.
I totally agree. I have another friend who she has this theory where marriages, just like driver's licenses, should have an expiry date. Like
Hmm.
have them be valid for 7 years, and if you want to renew after 7 years, then go for it. And if you don't, well, the marriage is expired. And I'm like, that's genius. Why is nobody like in charge thought of this?
Well, it
Um,
is. I think it is genius. Like after 7 years, like you each go your own way with your own stuff. At 14 years, there's something else that you know,
yeah,
you divide,
totally.
I don't know. We're just, but I agree with you. I do think that marriage is getting married so young, a lot of times in our 20s, without having time to really get to know ourselves,
Hmm.
is another reason why people don't explore their sexuality. But one of the things, have you been watching the JoJo Siwa thing lately? Do you know who she is?
I mean, I haven't watched this reality show that she's on, but I hear the scuttlebutt about what's happened.
Well, she's that doesn't identify as a lesbian anymore, and
Right.
everybody's like, "Oh, I mean, oh my God, give the kid a break." It is so normal in our community for people to try on a bunch of different a bunch of different letters, of the LGBTQIA plus, before they find one that fits them. And my heart goes out to her because she's had to do this in the public eye, you
Hmm.
know, and also making announcements about things like that. I think you're really, really sure at some point, but then something happens, and then you start to think to yourself, maybe I'm not a lesbian. And it's like, I don't know the whole story. The only thing I know is that she says she's not a lesbian anymore. So I haven't read up on it or anything like that. But this is the thing. It's never too late to question your sexuality. What is she,
Hmm.
all of 24 or 25? Oh my
Yeah.
God, let her do what she wants. I just,
Yeah.
you know.
Like we're allowed to evolve and change. I I think of an example of that that's most relevant when I was a younger adult was Anne Heche, who was Ellen DeGeneres' partner for a long time. And then she decided afterwards, when that relationship was over, that she was going to have a relationship with men. And it's like, you know what? Everybody was really hard on her for that and saying she was
But
just being
she
a
was,
lesbian for famous to be famous.
no, she was
And
bisexual. Didn't she identify? She always identified. I don't care, but like she did identify as bisexual.
but like, who cares? Like, seriously, it's only relevant to this person. Like, I
Well,
don't know. I guess if you're in the public eye.
yeah. Well, but also too, and I don't want to go down this road today on this. There are some real reasons why people who identify as lesbian get very, very upset when someone says they're lesbian and then all of a sudden they say they're not.
Mhm.
And and that it's very complicated. Maybe we'll do a podcast episode about it one time. But it's more about like a lot of times women will go back to being with men because women can't give them some of the things that they want easily. For
Mhm.
example, if somebody wants children,
Mhm.
and they haven't been able to think about it outside of the heteronormative narrative, compulsory
Mhm.
heterosexual narrative that a child needs a mom and a dad, then they just can't wrap their head around that they could actually have a partnership with another woman and raise two children together.
That is something we hear amongst the population that we work with quite a bit.
Yeah,
When women come out to us and tell us their stories, a big part of their stories is often, I want to be a mom.
yeah.
Another big storyline that we hear quite often is women who come from chaotic families of origin and they are looking for something safe,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
And if you think about it, in this world, entering into a lesbian relationship 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago is not safe. And unfortunately now it's starting to feel not safe again, you know? So
Mhm.
people may want to be with a woman, they may want to be in a relationship with the woman because the choice isn't whether you're gay or not. The choice is what you're going to do with your queerness. But they decide for their own safety to marry a man. Or
Mhm.
they just haven't even gotten there yet. Like when I married my ex-husband, I hadn't even really gotten there yet.
Mhm.
So I just, I was 20 something and really didn't know myself when I
Yeah.
married him, you know? So how can we begin exploring, Barb?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that getting curious about
Hmm.
your own feelings. This is again a theme that we see quite often in the women who come to us looking for help in discovering their sexuality and in coming out, is they are quite disconnected from their own feelings, right? They have a hard time recognizing their own feelings. So starting to get curious about the feelings that you have, like your emotions, your physicality, your sensations. And if you find that you're having a really extreme reaction to something, like say something's making you're feeling super grumpy but you're not sure why, or you're feeling super excited and you're not sure why. Anytime you're having a notable shift in your feelings, stop for a second. Take a moment and ask yourself, "Huh, this is really interesting. I wonder why I'm feeling this way right now. What was I doing when this feeling started? When did this feeling start?
Hmm.
Like what precipitated it?" And starting to get like just consider yourself like an explorer of your own terrain here, your own emotional and psychological terrain. And being conscientious about it, I think, is really important instead of sort of like blindly just feeling things and not really taking note, or feeling like just feeling them without really considering them. Part of this process is mindfulness, right?
Hmm.
So that would be my first suggestion.
And I'm going to give a pre-suggestion. Give yourself permission.
Totally.
So many times we just, I just did a meditation group for Authentically Us before we were recording this. And one of the newer members who said to me at the group was that, she was giving herself, like she had never given herself permission to think about this before.
Mm,
to like, and she goes, being with all of you for the last week has really set me into a bit of a tizzy. I don't think that was the word she used, but a lot of emotions are coming up for her
mhm,
because she's never had a space where she can ask these questions,
mhm,
you know? So a lot of times is the pre-step is saying, I'm just going to go and explore this. I am going to go see if being bi, being lesbian, being pansexual is something that feels right to me.
mhm,
And so giving yourself permission to do that, and then being curious, start to notice what you're attracted to. I'll tell you, like for me, like my awareness, my mindfulness came up when like I started to realize that I looked at women all the time. And I had done it my whole life, but I hadn't like it was just something I had done, but I never realized that I was looking at them in a way of being attracted to them. I just,
mhm,
and so having that moment when I realized, oh, this isn't just me looking at people. I'm actually attracted to this person or that person or
mhm,
something like that. And
mhm,
so I gave myself the permission to look, of course, but then I began to notice. What
mhm.
are some of the things you noticed when you first were exploring all that you before may have like just not even thought about?
Well, what are some of the things that I noticed? Well, in retrospect, And something I became aware of is that for pretty much my entire life, I had been very drawn to and admired women who did not conform to, social
Compulsory
standards.
heterosexual
Yeah, they did not conform
standards
to.
of beauty, right?
Right, right. So women who lived outside of those margins. Unfortunately, in the 80s, growing up, there was lots of examples of that. Like, why was I so obsessed with Annie Lennox and her like shaved head and her men's suits? Like women like that really fascinated me, and I wanted to be a woman like that, and I admired women like that, and that was kind of like this sense of like fascination with these women.
Hmm.
Katie Lang, there was another one before she came out.
Hmm.
I can remember being like, "Wow, she's so different. She's so unusual." I really love how she goes against the grain. Now I recognize that like masculine center or androgyny is like super attractive to me. So it's like I just wasn't connecting the dots
Yeah, that's how
between.
I feel about it too. Like I'm attracted to masculine of center people too, and it just I, you can hear my like I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep this in the podcast because I just didn't have the language for it.
Hmm.
I didn't understand that this was an attraction, even though I was very aware of queer people and, I was the biggest ally ever, but I just didn't I didn't connect the dots. And I
Hmm.
find that really, really interesting about this journey because a lot of times people um get curious and then they start connecting the dots,
Hmm.
we talk about, like, for example, memories that we put it in one pile and it should have been actually in another pile, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
One of our favorite ways in Lotus group coaching, excuse me, Lotus community coaching, we have a whole folder about queer media. You need to educate yourself. A
Hmm.
lot of our clients actually read young adult queer literature. They find it really entertaining. And actually think it's sort of a good idea because they are baby gays.
Hmm.
You're a baby gay no matter what age you are. You can be a baby gay at 15 and you can be a baby gay at 75.
Yep.
And so they really enjoy reading like the young adult stuff, movies, books, listening to podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts out there that explore this topic. Um, and so, like, starting to take a diet
Hmm.
of queer literature, queer entertainment, and just watching and seeing what resonates with you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and there's plenty out there.
Hmm.
There's plenty of stuff out there. Now, if you can, try and choose some lesbian movies that don't end in tragedy.
Right. The old stuff, everybody died. Okay, I'm going to give you one. All right. So if you're a later in life lesbian and you're like in your late 40s, 50s, 60s, you need to watch Desert Hearts. Hearts is a great movie.
Yeah, sure.
It's actually got a great ending. And your contemporaries that are your age will have seen that movie, meaning women that have come out maybe earlier than you will have seen that movie. Tanda, my wife, turned me on to that movie. And, she was like, her memory of it was actually like, it was like, the Butch dies kind of thing at the end, but it wasn't that. And she says, oh my God, this movie is a lot better than I remember.
Yeah,
Ah.
the ending's actually pretty sweet, that one.
It is actually quite sweet. It's a good movie, and there's great lesbian sex in it. If you haven't had lesbian sex and you're curious about that, Desert Hearts actually has very realistic lesbian sex scenes.
Totally. And it's boy, back in the day, that was a scandalo. That was a very
Yeah,
scandalous
absolutely.
film.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's really important sometimes, like when you're looking for this stuff, is to, especially around lesbian gay content, is to see who the authors are, the directors, the producers, because generally queer people will make good content. Schitt's Creek, great, great show if to normalize what it's like to be gay, and
Mhm.
and 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 it's got a very great gay love story in there. I love that show. I have seen it 3 times through. But if you want a funny, quirky comedy, Schitt's Creek, and if you're worried about, oh, my husband's going to see what I'm watching, or my kids they're not going to say anything about Schitt's Creek.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So Barb, what are some of your recommendations about like queer media that you love and really like to consume? Barb and I have I'm going to let her answer that, but Barb and I have a love for RuPaul. We talk to each other about each of the drag queens. We know who they are.
Totally. I'm totally obsessed with RuPaul and also just drag in general. I really love going to social media for finding queer creators, especially lesbian creators. In more traditional types of media, like film and whatnot, like we can find a lot more examples of like gay male culture than we can for gay women culture, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I think lesbians still have a little catching up to do as
Well,
far as
that goes back to the patriarchy because they don't have the access to the same
right.
things that the men have.
Right. Right. And it's maybe just not as marketable or sellable or whatever. That's what Hollywood thinks of, lesbian relationships. I don't know. I personally think it's great content. So going straight to the source, I really love that. I am firmly in lesbian TikTok. I just
I'm in
absolutely
such
love it.
queer Instagram right now. There is nothing but queer content on my Instagram right now. So I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Instagram is fabulous. Like Instagram, I follow so many drag kings.
Hmm.
And we don't even like who talks about drag kings?
No,
You
we
know,
don't talk about
like
those, right?
almost nobody, right?
Well, we
But
don't
there's
talk
some,
about trans men either because there's a reason there. But okay, we'll talk about that later.
but it's fast. It's fantastic talent that you can connect with right there. The creator just gets to put it out there, and it's right there. So Instagram and TikTok. Plus, there's a lot of great thirst traps on TikTok.
Well, there's a lot of very attractive women on TikTok. There's this
Yeah.
the recent joke, TikTok made me gay because there are some really attractive, typically mask of center lesbians on there, and they're hot.
Doing all kinds of things,
Doing all
ironing
kinds of things.
clothes, chopping wood,
Oh, I love the girl that chops the wood.
she's so great. We're two dirty old
If
women.
you are just, what did you say? I didn't hear
I
that.
said we're two dirty old women.
She's in her 30s or 40s. That's acceptable.
Sure, sure, we'll go with
Sure.
that.
But she's hot. She really is. She's
Yeah.
hot. But the thing is that like, going on TikTok, the thing is with social media, you can create a fake account. So if you're really worried, and I'm saying this, and creating a fake account, really sort of gets to my ethics and my values. But
Mhm,
I also know that when people are new to this, they don't really want to, they're oftentimes not ready to show up as their full selves with their full names and their full identities.
mhm,
Often that changes over time. But with social media, if you want to start to explore, like, looking at femme lesbians, looking at butch lesbians, looking at trans men, trans women, if you want to explore any of that and following these creators and learning about the culture, it is a wonderful way to explore your sexuality. And I always say when I have somebody, okay, so we have a chat widget on the website. And so people will ask me questions all the time. And so when I can tell it's somebody brand spanking new, I think I like girls, but I'm not sure, and all that stuff like that. What I say to them all the time, go explore our blog. We have lots of blog
mhm.
pieces about coming out later in life on AnneMarieZanzal.com. And then I say, listen to our podcast. And I'm
Yes.
going to do a plug for this podcast. So you're already listening, you're already in the inner circle, but I'm doing a plug for this podcast because what it does is, especially the first 2 seasons, it's all stories of women coming out later in life. As I have grown in my journey, this podcast has grown too. But in the beginning, the first 2 seasons are all women coming out later in life and sharing their stories. see if any of those stories resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
If they keep saying things that you go, "Oh my god, I thought I was the only one who thought this," or "Oh my god, um, oh my god, she's me. She's living my life." If any of those things start to come up for you, chances are you may not be as straight as you think you are. So, listening to the podcast, going on TikTok, going on Instagram, going on other social media channels that we're just not a part of, and seeing if the queer content speaks to you.
I think that is something you're saying there. We need to sort of underscore it, is seeing if it speaks to you. It's not like listening to this podcast or watching a TikTok or watching a film is going to make you gay. Okay.
Hmm.
If you can go into this with a genuine sense of curiosity and sense of discovery without expectations for an outcome, the goal here is not to get you to gay.
Hmm.
The goal here is to get you to you,
Absolutely. I love that.
right? So, whatever version of LGBTQIA plus applies, if it applies, that is what you want to get to. So, don't worry about the label so
Hmm.
much. Just
Hmm.
worry about what resonates with you in particular.
And I love that. We're going to make a clip of that. We're just trying to get you to you.
Hmm.
And your people have honest questions about this, and you may start exploring all of this and be like, yeah, this doesn't fit me, this is not who I am.
And that's
um,
okay.
and that's okay. There's lots of people who do that. And the decision again is, how are you going to live this life? And maybe you had a brief interaction with a woman. Maybe you slept with somebody a couple of times. Maybe you had feelings for a friend. But then as you go to explore this, you're like, yeah, I think that was a one-time thing. I don't think that's anything else for me. And
Hmm.
so being willing to explore and being able to ask questions doesn't make you wrong or dirty. It
Exactly.
just makes you curious. And that is all. Now,
Yes.
a lot of the women, when we talk about exploring their sexuality, a lot of times they think they have to get on the dating apps. So, Miss Lavender Dating, let's give some advice around getting to the dating apps when you perhaps are still married.
Hmm.
And how do you navigate all that?
So, my opinion about this is finding community is fantastic, and you can do that through dating apps. In fact, a lot of the dating apps are geared towards finding community, not necessarily just finding relationship, like intimate partner relationship.
Mhm.
So do that if you wish. There are other ways you can cultivate community as well without the pressure or expectation of being on a dating app forum that maybe something will turn into something else. So I would encourage folks to look in other areas as well. In fact, I mean, okay, I'm just going to plug us. I'm just going to plug us right off the hop and say, before you hop on the dating app, maybe try Authentically Us first.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Barb.
Well, it's just so much more geared towards exploration of identity rather than um, like forming relationship, like an
Hmm.
intimate partner relationship,
Hmm.
where I think sometimes that can happen on dating apps where you even in community spaces, even in like Facebook groups where they're like, lesbians, lesbian community friends only, but really there's a lot of people there who are hunting for their next partner. And
Well, yeah, and I remember the first lesbian group that I was in. I mean, like by the time we were, I mean, there were so many partners at the end. That's where I met my wife. I wasn't
right,
looking for her, but that's where I met my wife.
that use the dating apps for community if you wish, but you're also going to run into this other stuff. And you might find it really overwhelming or getting into something before you are ready.
Right.
And that can really spell disaster. If you find yourself falling for somebody or getting into an intimate relationship with somebody before you are ready and before your life is ready, then things can get a little bit out of control. So I would really recommend. I mean, I know it's our own space, but this is what it's for, and you're
Right.
going to meet other women who are on the same journey of self exploration
Hmm.
without the pressure of uh, that kind of connection, right?
Right. And Authentically Us is not just Facebook group. Even meetups. Meetups is a great opportunity. If you live, especially if you live in a bigger area, there's lots of queer bit meetups that you can go to. We have some of our clients that are really involved in the meetups in their area, and that's where they find in-person community, which I think is really, really important.
Totally, totally. Yeah, community is a huge part of it,
Mhm.
and it can be powerful, the ability to connect with other people who are going through the same thing as you,
Mhm.
um, seeing your own story reflected in the stories of others. And
Mhm.
it can lend you so much clarity about not just who you are, but where to go next.
Absolutely. And we want to give you some gentle reminders now is that it does, and also too, Barb already said it, but exploration doesn't have to lead to a label unless you want one.
Right.
So just because you're exploring, you may explore and then be like, I don't know if any of these labels fit me,
Mhm,
but I know I'm not straight. So
mhm,
you don't have to end up with a label. So don't like that is not part of the exploration. As Barb said, the exploration is about finding out who you are authentically are.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's a process of discovery, right? It's not like one day you're just going to sort of take the mask off and then like your authentic lesbian self is underneath. Like, no, this is a gradual uncovering. And remember, it's taken you years to get here
Hmm.
and to develop who you are to this point as a person. And it may take years for you to get to the point where you really know and understand who you are, and who you're turning into, right?
Well, so many times some of our newer clients think this is all going to be over in 6 months.
Oh gosh.
Now, I mean,
No.
it isn't. And I, I'm sort of like, people, Barb knows me well. I'm a straight shooter, really. Actually, I'm a gaily forward shooter.
That's much better.
But I am somebody that will talk plainly about things. And
Mhm,
and sometimes I don't sugarcoat things. Sometimes I should be a little bit gentler. But one of the things is this is a process that takes years.
mhm,
It may take you like a year and a half to, say you decide to get divorced. It may take you a year and a half, 2 years to have all that happen. But then afterwards, there's still so much more work to be done.
mhm,
And a lot of times, when our attention is on the end of our last life, we don't have much energy or much desire really to explore all of these things. So
mhm,
sometimes this exploration of of our sexuality and who we are, really, even though we may know we're gay, and we get divorced because of that, or it's one of the many reasons we get divorced, that we just don't have time. And so what ends up happening afterwards, we begin to answer some of the deeper questions.
mhm, mhm. And I think that's why a lot of women in midlife, this is when the process starts, right? Because
Hmm.
the rest of their obligations in life are starting to maybe ease up a little bit. Maybe they've had a career
Hmm.
and are well developed in their career now and in a place of security and holding, a title or a place of importance in their career where they don't have to worry about reaching for the next bar.
Hmm.
Or maybe you've been a mom
Hmm.
and now your kids are older, a lot more self sufficient, maybe even heading towards the end of high school or even gone off to college. And so now this has created some space within your life where you're not so like driven by the daily demands of other people that things have started to open up for yourself. And once your mind gets that little bit of space to play, guess what? It's going to try and solve that problem. If something's not right within yourself and something's not aligned between like what you authentically need as a person and the rest of your life, as soon as your brain has that little bit of space to play, it's going to play. It's
Oh,
going to
absolutely.
ask you
That's what
what,
happened to me. Yeah.
right?
Well, and also too, I want it's so interesting how people think that we shouldn't change.
Oh,
Like, it is so normal to change. That
yeah.
is the point of life,
Yeah.
is to experience, to change and grow. Growth is queer,
Hmm.
literally and beautifully, because queer, the old definition of queer is something a little bit different, something a little bit off.
Hmm.
That's how I think the word queer is defined.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing is that change is part of life. And so accepting that it is okay to change, and it's especially okay for you to change how
Yeah.
you live your life, is giving yourself permission to say it's okay if things change. For
Hmm.
example, Barb and I get a lot of people that come to our groups and say, I'm blowing up my life, I'm destroying my family. And so we really work with self kindness and we're like, no, actually, you're changing your family. And it was so funny. Barb and I did a panel for Curve Foundation last week of when we were recording this, and it was so funny. Our two co-presenters said they had blown up their lives, and I'm like,
Totally.
no,
And
don't say that.
these are people who've been out for a long time,
Oh, I
too, right?
know, and I'm like, well, and yes, your life does significantly change, but it's change. You're
Yeah.
not blowing your life. You're not destroying your life. You're
Hmm.
just changing things.
Hmm.
And maybe sometimes things get a little heated or unclear or sad, but that is part of change and growth.
Totally. And our relationships change.
Hmm.
Listen, our relationships to our children change as they grow and become different people. Our relationships to our spouse changes.
Hmm.
And one of the ways I described to my youngest, I remember back when I was first doing in the process of separation, is I tried to explain to her, I'm like, look, the decision that I made at 23 doesn't apply to me today. And there's not a lot of other decisions that I made when I was 23 years old that still apply to me. If that were true, I'd still have a rat tail and be wearing jelly bracelets and like, like, I mean, I've changed in over the past 20, 25 years. And this is one of those things that I've now outgrown. And it was a way of framing it for her that even though she was young and it was difficult news for her to take, it helped her to understand. And it wasn't until later on when she had her own adult relationship and changed very rapidly in the space of a few years that she's like, oh, right, the relationship that was good for me back then is maybe not the relationship that's good for me today. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's okay. That's okay. We have to normalize not being married for your entire life to the same person.
Totally.
We
Yeah.
have to normalize that. I'm a big believer that, yes, there are people that are very happy being married their whole life to the same person. And if that is you, wonderful. But most people are not. And so we have to
Mhm.
normalize that it's okay not to be married to the same person for your whole life. So
7-year marriage licenses, I'm telling you.
yeah, that's the new, we're going to push that. So when you're exploring, we just want to give a little bit of a caveat here, is that a lot of times some fear might come up, and shame and old internalized messages that we've received about queerness, about motherhood, about divorce, about marriage, about faith, all kinds of things will come up. And so, Barb and I, our three tenets in everything we do is self compassion, community, and mindfulness and meditation. And so, we really, really encourage you to offer yourself some self kindness or self
Mhm.
compassion when those difficult feelings come up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
one of the ways you can do that is, though you may be listening to this podcast right now and think you're the only person out there that like has been thinking this stuff, is to say to yourself, I am not the first person to feel this way.
That's right.
There are many people out in the world who have had these difficult feelings before.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
I would say, like, if it's one mission in our career, I think it's to normalize this experience.
Yes, that is my mission is to normalize that people can come out whenever they want to come out.
Yeah.
And not everybody has this all figured out. And you know, Barb, how many men message me on the we're going to be opening this up to men soon. I get so many men who message me on my website. Although my website is clearly, geared for a female
Mhm.
audience, there are so many men who are married to women and
Mhm.
are express the same things that our women express, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And so um, it is okay. You don't have to have had your sexual attraction figured out when you were 15. You may not have figured it out until now.
And that's
And that
okay.
is okay. And whatever your now is, whatever age you are, that is perfectly okay.
Totally, totally. And making the change, it's not a once and done thing. It's not like, well, gee, I guess I'm a lesbian now, so ding, I'm
Yeah.
moving forward. Those three pillars that you talked about,
Hmm.
mindfulness, self compassion, and community, these things must be approached as practice,
Hmm.
not as a once and done, not as, oh, I've made two or three queer friends and so I'm good, not where I was kind of, oh, I guess I'm okay. Like, it's
Yeah.
really, it takes practice to change your mindset and
Mhm.
to evolve your strengths in each of those areas. So it's something you have to tend to pretty much on a daily basis, wouldn't you say?
I would say a daily basis. There are times where other things matter more, just
Sure.
because of life, but it's something we do have to think about a
Hmm.
lot. And it's funny because in my own coming out journey, I would put it away. I would take it out, put it away, take it out, put it
Hmm.
away, take it out, put it away. And at some point, something happened, and I knew I just couldn't put it away anymore. So,
Hmm.
a lot of times people have those experiences. We start to explore, and then we put it away. So, that may be you right now. Maybe you explored 5 years ago, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I can't put this away. And you're like wondering what the heck to do. So first of all, I want to assure you're absolutely typical and normal. You
Hmm.
know, lots of people do that, and it is okay to question and then put it away for a while. You don't maybe you're not ready yet, and sometimes people do put things away for a while, but
Hmm.
oftentimes they do come back to it at some
Hmm.
point in their lives.
Hmm.
Barb and I are big, huge believers in therapy and coaching,
Hmm.
and I do not think you can do this journey without a therapist or a coach
Right.
beside you. Whether you see the therapist or coach every week or just every couple of weeks, but we really believe this. I offer coaching. Barb offers coaching. She will soon be a licensed therapist, so she'll be able to do therapeutic work in the next year or two. We really, really believe the importance of having someone to talk to, someone who understands this journey, because we have found in our own exploration that oftentimes even people who are gay or lesbian sometimes don't understand the later in life journey.
Yeah.
So having somebody who understands changing your life at post 30,
Hmm.
and somebody who understands what it's like to explore a new identity as a fully formed adult,
Hmm.
um, is really helpful to have in your corner.
There's that saying, you said it the first time I heard it, which is the best coaches are the ones who played the game.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I will add to that too. I think also having some training as to how to help people, like coaching training, and how to help people get their personal development moving forward.
Well, and I just want to say that the coaching training out there, some is good,
Hmm.
some is not.
Yeah.
Both Barb and I have master's degrees. Barb's soon to have a master's degree, but both of us have master's degrees in counseling. I've got my MDiv, and I also did 6 units of what's called clinical pastoral education. That's how I became a chaplain. I've had a lot of experience before I ever did this. Had a
Hmm.
lot of experience helping people process really hard things. For
Hmm.
example, I was a hospice chaplain for 7 years. I helped people process their death. Um, and Barb is getting to the point where she'll be able to do therapeutic work with people as well. And so having people that have played that, I have found that some of the coaching programs out there, make sure it's a really good one. When I
Hmm.
see like get your coaching certificate for LGBTQ people for $49, I'm like, no, no,
No,
no,
no, no, no.
no,
No,
no.
don't go there for people.
Yeah, no, don't go to that person because
Mhm.
even if they are the kindest, sweetest, nicest person in the world, there are things they don't know about.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's like I think it's a mix of both of those factors.
Hmm.
Having somebody I know when I went looked for a therapist, I looked for a lesbian,
Hmm.
right? Because I wanted somebody who understood certain contexts and not to have to explain things. So similarly, when people come to find us, I think knowing that we both had a later in life transformation experience is really encouraging, and it makes them feel a lot safer because they know that we know how challenging this experience is,
Hmm.
and also an example of what life is like on the other side. Like
Hmm.
your life doesn't end when your marriage ends. Your life doesn't end when you're coming out. You're not blowing up your life, right? Like
Hmm.
we're just changing it.
Right. So, what are some small steps we can encourage people to do this week, Barb, as they begin to explore their sexuality?
So I'm going to encourage folks who are trying to become more aware of their feelings, more aware of their thoughts, their cognitions. Earlier in the podcast, I was talking about like anytime that I'm having a big feeling, whether it's positive or negative, take note of it, write it down. Because if you don't write it down, you're not going to remember. So keep a journal, keep a thought journal, and a feelings journal. And just like, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, because again, these kinds of changes require practice. It's not just I wrote it down once and then it's done. You need to actually put some effort in. And this is what we mean by doing the work, right? Is
Hmm.
actually taking the time each day to make a note. So, and do it in the way that's easiest for you. If it's maybe making a note on an app in your phone rather than physically writing it down in a journal, or if it's easier to do on your laptop in a secret folder, do it
Hmm.
that way. But any
Hmm.
way that actually works for you, do it. But
Hmm.
write down some of those feelings as they happen and try and remember what brought the feeling on.
I think that's a really good advice. And then I'm going to give a really easy and fun one. Watch a queer movie.
Okay.
Just watch something gay. Queer.
Sure.
I really like if you want to watch something campy and funny, it's from the 90s and it's called But I'm a Cheerleader.
Love
Actually,
it.
RuPaul's in it as like they're all attending what kind of therapy is it?
Like
Conversion therapy.
conversion.
It's not conversion. It's not therapy. It's conversion abuse. But they're attending a camp to convert them to be straight. And RuPaul plays one of the camp counselors in it as a man. He plays it as a man. He doesn't play it as a drag queen. One of my favorite movies. You can go on Amazon, Netflix, all the streaming platforms and put LGBTQ stories in there. But I really start with something fun. Start with something that's silly and it's going to make you laugh.
Then go into ChatGPT and say, I really enjoyed this movie. Give me 10 more suggestions of movies just like it.
Mhm. Or I'm going to give you another chat GPT prompt.
Okay.
Say, I am exploring my sexuality as somebody in the LGBTQ movies. LGBTQ community. What 10 movies or books would you recommend that I start with? I'd like to see that list
Hmm.
because ChatGPT has been developed by straight people. You sort of have to, with ChatGPT, you have to go back to it a lot. So, like, you have to train your chat GPT. So, mine, for example, now has my own voice and also knows that I work with queer people. So, it's always giving me all kinds of sometimes stereotypical queer suggestions and stuff like that. But ChatGPT is a great place to start.
Well, I think I've told you this a long time ago, but when I put a prompt into ChatGPT a while back and said, give me a list of website suggestions for coming out later in life, yours was number one.
Yay!
Yay!
We've worked very hard to make that website number one. We really have. So we just want to remind you, your queerness, however it ends up showing up, is really worthy, sacred, and real. And I'm going to say this, exploring it really is an act of radical self-love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Becoming who you are is your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
That is your
one
purpose.
crazy, beautiful life to
Right.
figure out who you are and what you want to do with it. It's your decision alone. That's your purpose for being here.
Right. Your life's purpose is to figure out who you are and what
Mm-hmm.
makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think that maybe you're not as straight as you thought you were, having fun exploring this and finding, being really kind to yourself as you go through this,
Mm-hmm.
as well as finding community, whether it's with us or somebody else, and also really leaning into, like Barb says, like, begin to notice things,
Mm-hmm.
begin to notice the big feelings that come up for you, begin to notice what you're attracted to, paying attention to things and figuring out what makes you happy, what
Mm-hmm.
makes you excited, what makes you feel more alive. And I think that giving yourself permission to explore is the best way to start.
I agree.
Well, thank you, Barbara Rowlandson. It was nice
Oh,
to talk to you today.
always a pleasure, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
We are going to link a couple of our handouts we have for this journey. We're going to give you, we'll link it in the YouTube and in the podcast notes. We have 3 questions to ask yourself when you're starting out later in life. We will also link how to join Authentically Us. And if you're somebody who may be in the messy middle, we will link our messy middle checklist. And there's a way to use that checklist. It's not as formal as it sounds. But we'll link those things for you. So you will have, and we also have a wonderful coming out guide. So 5 places to start when you're coming out later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And we may have to update the Barb and include some of the things we talked about today.
Yeah, I think you're. You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.